Hello, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Kyla, and in this video we're going to be talking about all the books that I read in the month of March. In the month of March, I read 18 books as well as 5 graphic novels, and in this video I'm going to share my thoughts on them. Some of them I'm going to go over like rapid fire, or else we will be here forever. I'm also doing this video standing up today because I don't think I can handle sitting on the floor for that long. I will not be able to feel my legs afterwards. So we're going to go in order of star rating per usual. I will let you know my thoughts. I will be very brief on the synopsis because that's just how I roll. I don't like to give too much away. I don't like to know things going into books. I know a lot of you are the same. I think that's it, so let's just go ahead and dive in. So let me first go over the graphic novels really quickly because I'm not rating these right now. I am still so new to graphic novels that I'm like, I don't even know how to rate them. I don't know my feelings. I feel like I need to read more before I start rating them and really get an idea of like what my taste is with them. But I will just go over real quick what my thoughts were. So the first one that I read was Grimoire Noir. This is a little spooky witch story about this boy whose sister goes missing, and his father is a policeman, and they're trying to figure out what happened and if the witches of this town are involved. And it was cute. I really enjoyed it. I loved the artwork on this one. It was very dark, very sinister, and it was just so incredibly well done. I really enjoyed the characters, so overall really enjoyed this one. The second one that I read was the Seance Tea Party. This is also a spooky one. I started with spooky. I just felt like it was the best place to start. Her recommendations from Liv from Liv's Library and Kendall from Bookphoria, they really came through for me on the recommendations. So the Seance Tea Party, this is a cute little like middle grade ghost story, but also like a coming of age story, and kind of takes you through childhood and also like talking about getting older and really just never losing your inner child. This one felt really young to me. Like, it is middle grade, so I can't really fault it for that, but like as an adult, a lot of the time I can get past middle grade and how young it feels, but this one in particular just felt really young. But I really did enjoy the artwork and the story, and as the story went on I enjoyed it more. So overall, thumbs up on this one. The next one was Garlic and the Vampire. Again, adorable. This one is probably like the cutest one because just the artwork and Garlic herself and like this whole story about the vampire, I was just here for it. It just like made me smile. This is like totally a cozy read, and if you just need something to like bring a little bit of light into your life, definitely Garlic and the Vampire. My favorite graphic novel of the month was Lightfall. Oh my god. Not only was the coloring in this one amazing, the artwork in here was incredible, but I freaking love these characters so much. Bee and Cat are like my new favorite fantasy characters. They are so cute. They go off on this little adventure to go find Bee's grandfather, who took off kind of on an adventure of his own, but he has memory loss, so they have to go and find him, and the things that they get up to along the way, and it leaves you on a cliffhanger, and like I need to read the second one immediately because I just freaking loved this story and the artwork and the characters so much. Like, this is definitely top tier, and I will be like measuring other graphic novels up to this one, at least so far. I absolutely loved it. And then the last one that I read was Sheets, and this one was just okay for me. The story is very sad, and overall just like, it's a ghost story, but I really didn't enjoy the artwork that much. The coloring, the art style, it just was not for me. And this is what I mean by like me kind of figuring out my taste. And yeah, like I said, the story was just okay. I flew through it. It was a very quick read, but like it just was not my favorite, and the art style is not my favorite, so it's not something that I think I will continue. And that is it for the graphic novel, so let's go ahead and dive into the actual books that I read this month. Luckily for me, I did not have any DNFs or 1 stars this month, so we're just gonna skip right ahead and go into my 2 stars this month. And I had 2 of them this month. The first one being The Golden Spoon by Jessa Maxwell. This one kind of made me really sad because it was definitely one of my most anticipated of the year. When I heard about this, I was like, that sounds so up my alley. And that's the problem with this book. So this is a kind of cozy mystery-ish, but it's about a group of people who go on a baking show and some things start happening on the baking show. And like, this is very niche, okay? Like I'm the niche for this book. Okay, let me start by saying that. This book is like the Great British Bake Off, but like make it murder. And I'm here for that, okay? That sounds like it would be up my alley. But unfortunately, the mystery of this is just, why did we spend so much time with the characters and not enough time on the mystery? And the mystery was not even really that exciting. And when it happens and when everything starts to unravel, you're like, and? I just spent all this time getting to know all of these characters. And when I mean like getting to know, I mean getting to know. Like go over in depth, kind of like they would on a competition show where they're like sitting one-on-one with the camera, sharing about their lives, sharing about themselves. We get a chapter on each one at the beginning, like introducing themselves. And like I said, I am the audience for this book. I am obsessed with the Great British Bake Off. It is one of my favorite like shows of all time. It's a guilty pleasure. It makes me feel cozy. It makes me smile. I love everything about it. This book is something that I should have loved, but even I was bored during those chapters. I was like, I do not care about any of you. Cool getting to know your backstory, but like could have condensed it all into one chapter, done like a little blurb about each of them, and then made the mystery more interesting, but unfortunately, that didn't happen. Unfortunately, we got a chapter on each character. I think there's like 7, 8, or 9 of them. It's a lot. And the hosts. And then, you know, we get into like the baking show part of it. The mystery is just not there. And like, as it unfolds, you're like, this is what I read all of this for. Granted, it is like a shorter book. It's just over 200 pages, I believe, but even that was too long. So, unfortunately, this one got 2 stars for me. I do not see this book reaching a very wide audience because I think you really do have to appreciate a baking show to really even slightly enjoy this book, so I don't know. Anyways, those are my thoughts. And then my next 2 star is actually a 2.5, and this is just heartbreaking. How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. Again, one of my most anticipated of the year. This is becoming quite a trend. I don't know what's happening. What do I even say about this? I do not know. The title makes no sense. Makes no sense whatsoever. This should not have been called that. Granted, if it had a different title and alluded to what happens in this book, I don't think that it would go over very well or sell as many copies, but like they totally pulled like the veil over. Like this book, just the title makes no sense. What you think you're getting in this book is that 2 siblings whose parents have just passed away come together to clean out their parents' house and get it ready to sell, and some spooky things start happening. That's what it tells you in the synopsis. That is not what happens in this book. I am not going to give it away. If you haven't seen it already, I don't want to ruin it for you, but oh my, the twist that this takes, I was here for at first. These first 100 pages, I was like, that is so interesting. I definitely want to know what happens. I'm into it. And I really like that Grady Hendrix breaks this book up into the different stages of grief. So we go through like the different stages. So we have one for like anger, one for depression, one for denial, that kind of thing. I really enjoy that. But this is a total like, what the fuck? What the fuck? What did I just read? What am I reading? Could this get any worse? Oh, it's getting worse. I'm interested. I'm not interested. I'm confused when the world is going on. Interesting ending. That's all I can say about it. Honestly, like, would I recommend it? I mean, at a 2.5, I think, no. But if you want to read a train wreck, check it out. So that is it for my 2 stars, and now let's move into the 3 stars. The first one is The Spite House by Johnny Compton. I will not say this is one of my most anticipated because I was weary going into this one. This is one of those haunted house stories where like someone is invited to come stay, the typical haunted house trope. But what I really liked about this one and what really intrigued me about this one is that we have a father and his 2 daughters that are on the run. They're using false identities for some reason and you do not know why, and he goes to work at this place called the Spite House and takes this job to stay in this house and just see if anything happens. That's really like the premise of this book, and I was really interested and I really enjoyed like the first little bit of it. As we're getting introduced to them, we're getting to see their dynamic of them on the run for whatever reason it is, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the characters and just really getting to like know them as a family unit. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And then we get into what's actually going on in the Spite House, and I actually found that very interesting. But what I will say is this book is so slow. So slow. And we get so much history of this book throughout it, and those parts just felt like they dragged on forever. So we'll get like, you know, some history of the house and it's really long and drawn out, and then we kind of go back into the story, and then we have more history of this house and it's long and it's drawn out, and then we go back into the story, and I just didn't really like kind of the pattern of that. I wish we had gotten just like a chapter of the history of this house somewhere in there, whether it was at the beginning before he took the job, somewhere in there, as opposed to just weaving it into the story, because I felt like it was taking me out of what was actually happening inside the haunted house. And some of that was really creepy, and some of the things that were going on, I was like, oh, you know, I haven't read that in a haunted house book before. That's really cool, or that's just a really interesting take on it. But because everything else was really long and really drawn out, I felt like I just couldn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to. Like I said, this is the 3 stars, so I did enjoy it. There were a lot of aspects of it, like I said, especially the twist that it kind of takes on a typical haunted house story. I really enjoyed it. I don't think it was executed as well as I would have liked, and again, it just felt really long, really drawn out, and I was just like wanting to skim a lot of it and just get back into the house and the scary and creepy things that were happening. And the ending definitely picked up more. I mean, it definitely got a little bit more fast-paced towards the end there as things are starting to unravel and you're getting to understand why they're running and what happened there, and that was really interesting. But like, then it just kind of ended and it fell a little flat for me, so it just ended up being middle of the road. And then I listened to Comfort Me with Apples on audio. This is a super short horror novella, so I was able to listen to it on a walk one day, and this is so interesting. It definitely is one of those horror novellas that takes you on a ride. The vibe of this book is very like Stepford Wives. Like, that's really all I can say about it, is that it just feels very Stepford. And then it takes a turn, and I did not see the twist coming, but I just don't think it was for me. I get why people love this book, like I truly do, and I get it, but it just was like not something that I'm super interested in, or I don't know. I just was like, oh, okay, cool, I guess, but like not really for me. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. I just, very Stepford. I thought it was gonna be one thing. The twist definitely took me for a turn. I was not expecting it, but overall, just not really for me. And then we have another heartbreaker for me. I had a lot of wins this month, okay? I can't really complain, but like this one hurts, okay? It's The London Seance Society by Sarah Penner, another one of my most anticipated of the year, if not like up there, like the second most anticipated, okay? This was like one of the ones that I was most looking forward to, but I mean, it was good. I enjoyed it. I thought I was going to love it more. In this book, we have two perspectives going on. We have our main character, Lena, who is looking to find answers on what happened to her sister. Her sister was murdered, and she wants to know who did it, what happened, and they were very much involved in this London Seance Society, so she thinks that something pertaining to them happen. And then we are also following the now head of the London Seance Society, who also is seeking answers because the previous head of the London Seance Society has passed away, and he wants to know what happened and try to solve his death and that kind of thing. And they both kind of come together, their paths cross, and they try to figure out what happened. The atmosphere in this book is top tier, okay? Sarah Penner knows how to do this time period, this 1800s time period. She did it in The Lost Apothecary. She's doing it here. She does it so well. It really does, like, I felt like I was in the world, okay? That was really well done. I love her writing so much. I love it, I love it. But it just kind of fell a little flat for me. It just felt a little bit long and drawn out as well. And I just felt like I wasn't really connecting with, I mean, obviously I'm not gonna really connect with like the head of the Seance Society, like he was a dick, okay? But I really wasn't connecting with Lena and her story. I think this book would have been so much better had we gotten chapters of Evie, who is Lena's sister, and what she was going through when she was kind of immersed in the London Seance Society before she passed away. I think we totally could have used her perspective. She seemed like kind of a badass, like, independent character, and I just wanted more from her. I really enjoyed what I was reading, like, and hearing through Lena. So I wish that we had gotten some of her chapters. I just think it would have added to the story. And without it, it just felt really repetitive. And maybe it would have added to the more repetitive. I don't know. It felt like we were just getting the same story over and over and over again, just two different perspectives. So it did feel really repetitive, and I just felt like it could have used a little bit of breakup there. Like I said, the atmosphere was perfect. I really enjoyed the plot of it and the mystery and kind of how it unfolded, but I did find myself a little bit bored at times and just wishing that the story would pick up and be a little bit faster overall. So it was good, it just wasn't what I was hoping it to be, and I really thought going into it was going to be a 5-star. It was not, and it just breaks my heart, but you know what? I'm happy to have read it. We're moving on. I had some other great reads this month. And then my last 3-star is actually a 3.5, and this was The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. I've been putting this one off for quite some time because I know that it has a lot of triggering content in it, and that is the first thing that I will say about this book is look up all of the trigger warnings. All of them. All of them. Do not glaze it over because this book is extremely difficult to read. Extremely difficult, okay? And I am someone who loves cults, okay? My favorite podcast is Was I in a Cult? It is one of my favorite things. So I have heard the gruesome tellings of what happens inside cults through that podcast. So I've heard some really horrific things, and I would say that this book is exactly in line. Like, Ashley Winstead did that justice, in my opinion. I just feel like she really did bring to life like what can actually happen and what has happened to a lot of people inside cults. So it was very difficult to read. It also just felt very, I don't want to say true crime, but it felt very real. Like what she was going through and what these girls were going through, it felt very real. And in this book, we are following our main character as she's trying to figure out what happened with her friend's death. She has had multiple friends pass away at different times, and no one has really looked into their deaths. The police have just kind of like glazed over and like, no, they're not dead, they've been suicides. Like, they, you know, nothing to look into here, and she's convinced that there is something more to look into. So she kind of teams up with her childhood friend to figure out what has happened to them. And it goes into the horrific. And it, like I said, really difficult to read, really well executed in my opinion. I love Ashley Winstead's writing. I did, again, just find this one really repetitive because we were getting the story told through our main character, but then also she's telling her story on a podcast kind of element to it. And I don't know, just something about it just didn't hit right for me in that sense. Like, I felt like I was reading a lot of the same things over and over again, and maybe that was just to like drive home how horrific what everything was happening is, but I don't know, it just didn't like land right for me, so I had to knock off a little bit for that. And like, it's weird to say that I really enjoyed this book because of how awful it is, but I did really enjoy it. 3.5 for me. I wouldn't widely recommend it by any means, especially if you're not a fan of cult stories at all. This really isn't gonna hit well for you. But if you are, please just look up everything about this book before going into it. Okay, moving on to 4 stars. The first one that I had was yet another in the Tiffany D. Jackson backlist because I'm obsessed and I can't help myself. And the one that I read this month was Allegedly. I don't know what to say. She nails it every single time. She is one of my favorite authors. This book is heartbreaking. It's real and raw. The story follows our main character who is Black and who is accused and convicted of killing the baby that she was babysitting with her mother. And it's her telling her story because she didn't actually do it, but she's been accused and convicted, and it's following her as she's living in this group home after being convicted on house arrest and doing all these things, and she's kind of telling her story on what actually happened. And it's horrific and it's heartbreaking, and she gets pregnant while she's in the home, and it just brings that whole aspect of it. And the way the story unfolds is gut-wrenching, but also so real. That's one thing that Tiffany D. Jackson does so well, is that she brings these stories to life, because this is 100% something that does happen in our world. People are accused and convicted all the time for crimes that they didn't do, especially BIPOC people, and it just is, it's awful. It's awful, it's awful, and she highlights that really well in this book, while also highlighting teen pregnancy and what it's like to live in a group home, and just how people are treated at trials and everything. Like, she just nails it on the head. I listened to this on audio. Highly recommend her backlist on audio. It's so incredible. I mean, obviously, I'm sure reading physically is great too, but I really enjoy the audio experience. She always picks the most incredible narrators who bring these stories to life, and like, I cannot recommend them enough. And then we have Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison. This is a fun little lighthearted horror. I mean, it gets a little gory, but like, it's just fun overall. This is like a fun, lighthearted werewolf story. I'm not really gonna go into it because that's really all you need to know. It's fun, it's enjoyable. This is about sisterhood and about family, and also just embracing like who you are, while also going through something horrific like becoming a werewolf randomly. I just thought it was so well done. I had a blast while reading this. It's definitely not like scary or super spooky or anything like that, but it was just fun. I had a good time. This is one of those books where I went in with like 0 expectations and just had a blast. And that's how I would recommend you going into it. Don't put anything on there. Don't think it's gonna be anything. Just go into it blind and like have a good time. Obviously, this is the perfect read for like Halloween time and that kind of thing. But like, if you want a little spooky in your summer, highly recommend picking this up. Next, I read Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. This was also such a fun time, and I had heard a little bit about this before going into it, so I knew what to expect with this. This is a British satire mystery, so don't go into it thinking that it's going to be a really like gut-wrenching thriller or anything like that. Like, go into it knowing this is going to be funny, this is going to be over the top, this is going to be hilarious, this is going to be everything that you wouldn't expect in a thriller, but like in the best way possible. And the way this story is told is so unique. I have never read anything like this before. Like, even like at the beginning, he's like, you know what? A murder happens on page 72. I'm making numbers up here. A murder happens on page 149, and you know, that kind of thing. Like, he's telling you what to expect later in the book without giving like too much away. So you're just kind of anticipating things as it's happening, and it's just so interesting. And again, you have British humor, you have British satire, which like I can so appreciate. Highly recommend listening to the audiobook while reading this. There are a lot of characters in this book, okay? This is definitely like a red string book where you need, like, if you want to sleuth along with what's happening in the book, like, you need to get out your paper and pen. You need to get out your whiteboard and your red string and like be prepared, because there are so many characters, because it's everyone in his family. And we are following them as they are getting together for a family reunion at the ski resort. And while they're there, someone dies, of course, but it also is how in the past everyone in his family has killed someone. So you're unraveling those stories while also trying to solve the current murder. And the main character in here is like really appreciative of Sherlock Holmes, which I love. It's not told in like a Sherlock way, but the way he wraps it up in the end and the words he uses like is very much Sherlock. Like, he's talking about deductions and how he's gonna deduce things, and I just like, I love it. I love it so much. I can definitely see myself like listening to this again when I need something that's like lighthearted and funny. I just really enjoyed it. Like I said, don't go into this and think you're gonna take it really seriously, because you're not. You're gonna go in, you're gonna be like, this is ridiculous, but like that's the best part of it. And then I could not help myself. I read What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. This was supposed to be the book troop pick for April, I believe, but like I could not wait. No, absolutely not. I love Kate Alice Marshall. I have quickly become a huge fan. She is definitely one of my top authors. I just freaking love her and her writing, and the way she does spooky so well. Love it. So this is her debut adult novel. In this book, we are following Naomi, and she was attacked when she was younger in the woods along with her two best friends. She was stabbed like 17 times by this guy, and so we are following her now as she is going back to the town 20 some odd years later after this man has passed away, and they convicted him because he was supposedly this serial killer that was attacking women throughout their area. And she's going back to town to kind of reunite with the two best friends that she went through this with, and he has passed away, and they're kind of going through the motions, and maybe, you know, they have a lot of secrets around what actually happened, and was the man who was convicted actually the one who did it? Well, we're unraveling that. And the way this book is told, oh my goodness. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. And maybe I am Kate Alice Marshall biased, but like, I was here for it. We also have a bit of a podcast element happening throughout this as well. And while she's kind of uncovering things, she's, you know, starting to unblock her memory, because obviously she went through something tragic and a lot of that has been blacked out. It starts to bring to light things about the town and her friends, and all of these secrets start to unfold. And it is a lot, but I just so enjoyed myself. And this is one of those books where like everyone that you're introduced to is a suspect or has some sort of secret or is somehow tied to this story, and like not in a good way. And I just really enjoyed that. Also, something tragic happens while she's in this town current day, and she also has to unpack that, and she's also unpacking this relationship with her dad. And it's just like, this book has so much going on, but I think it was executed really well. And do I think that the ending and like the reveals were the most thrilling thing? No, I don't. But I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the way that Kate Alice Marshall brought it to life and really made you kind of sit with her story for so long. I just feel like that was really impactful, and I really enjoyed it. I know this one is not getting like high praise, but again, went in with zero expectations other than just I love her and I love her writing, so I was really looking forward to it. Again, do I think it was the most groundbreaking thriller? No, but I think if you just go in expecting like a good story and to unravel this kind of mystery of what happened along with her, I think you will really enjoy this. My next one is actually a 4.5 star, and it is Any Man by Amber Tamblyn. This one, again, not an easy read. Apparently, that was the vibe this month. Please look up trigger warnings for this one as well. This one follows a female serial rapist, but through the perspective of the male victims that she has raped, and it is heartbreaking. It is so gut-wrenching. The way the story is told is unlike anything I've ever heard before. I listened to this on audio, and I really do think that that is the way to absorb this book, because we have a lot of kind of sound effects going on. Like, there's a huge moment in the book where they're talking about what's going on a talk show. So it's like a female talk show like The View, and in the audiobook, like, they're all talking at the same time, they're talking over each other, and it just brings to light, like, we already know there's a problem believing victims in a rape scenario, in a sexual assault scenario. Like, women go through that all of the time. We know that that is a problem. There are so many rapes out there that are unsolved, and it's ridiculous. But having this perspective from the male victims, which is something that you don't see or hear of very often, especially on the news and that kind of thing, and it just brings to light all of these conversations of like, well, how could a man get raped? Because they're strong. Couldn't he just fight her off? But you're hearing the most heartbreaking and gut-wrenching conversations of what these men are going through, and it's a lot. It does go into incredibly gruesome detail. It's hard to even like put into words the impact that this book has. Like, I got teary. I felt sick to my stomach while reading this book. I do not think this is for the faint of heart, but I do think it's really important, and I think that this book should definitely be talked about more. It's only like 6 hours long on audio. It's a very quick read, but so impactful in such a short amount of time. I could go on for a long time talking about this book, but like, you get it. It's worth the read, but go into it knowing that like, it's not going to be easy. It's an important conversation, and they never are they? And then my last 4.5 star, 4-star of the month was The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston, which is like, plot twist, shocker, right? Because I hardly ever read romance. It's not that I don't enjoy romance. You guys know. Like, I enjoy romance, okay? I can appreciate it. I just like when there's more to the plot going on than just the romance. I don't want to read just about romance. I want it intertwined with another story. And that's what I really enjoyed about this book, because this is also a very heavy story about grief and like, clown face to me, because I thought this was going to be a fun, lighthearted romance, so I was like, I'm gonna read it after we spread. Joke's on me. Because it was not an easy read. This follows our main character, and she has lost her father, and she is dealing with grief and goes back to her family town to like have his funeral and do all these things. And before she leaves, she meets this man and then finds out that he dies. And like, really, this is more so a story of like a love story of family and also processing grief, while also just being a love story as well. And like, I'm also really hard to please when it comes to paranormal things, but this one was done so incredibly well and so incredibly cute. I really enjoyed it. I also just love the kind of like Addams Family vibes of this family, because they own the funeral home, and it just felt like they're just conversations about death all of the time. So this is not a lighthearted read by any means. This is a very heavy with grief and heavy topic kind of romance book, which again, having that added plot made me really enjoy it. I can't say like a good time. Yeah, I had a good time. I also had like a really sad time. It made me tear up. I shouldn't have read it after we spread, but I did. I vlogged it if you want to see it. I'll have all of the reading vlogs about any of these books linked in the description in case you want to catch up, in case you missed any, but that was definitely experience. I would not recommend it, but I would highly recommend this book. Alright, let's move into the 5 stars, and while I'm on the topic, let's talk about it, because obviously this was a 5-star read. We Spread by Ian Reid. I don't think we're shocked by any means, because this is everyone's like favorite book of last year, and I get it. I get why everyone has enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. This book is the worst. It's the best, but it's the worst, okay? This book, if you have someone in your life who deals with Alzheimer's or memory loss or anything like that, whether that be a parent, grandparent, whatever, if you yourself are afraid of getting old and like what that might look like and what that entails, this book is going to be absolutely horrifying. And I think that's why it's considered a horror, because when you're reading it, you're like, this doesn't really feel like a horror, it doesn't read like a horror, but like that's what Ian Reid does. He brings real life horror into the horror genre, and I just think he does that so well in all of his books, but especially this one. This one was done so well. His writing is incredible. This is an incredibly fast read, and if you don't know what this book is about, we are following our main character Penny as she is transitioned into a home, although she doesn't remember ever talking about going to a home. She has lived in her little apartment. She's very independent. She is used to the way things are, and then one day she takes a fall, she wakes up, and she's in this home, and they're like, your husband set this up for you, remember? And she's like, I do not remember that. I don't remember ever having that conversation. So she's like, okay, feeling very strange about being there, but also unsure, and she can't really trust herself to know, like, is she just forgetting, or is there something more going on in this place? And tears, cried, just like everyone else. I didn't cry as much as I thought I was going to. I did keep it together quite well, I feel like, but it was still just very heavy on my heart. I have a grandparent who is very much at, like, the conversations of this happening have been there very heavy over the past couple of years, so it is very apparent in my life. I felt for this main character. I was in the story with her and very much relating to what was going on, and also just my own fears in this. I did cry, but I didn't cry as much as I thought I was going to, and this is just gonna be a book that sits with me. Do I recommend it? Yes, but again, just go into it knowing it's not going to be easy. It's going to bring up a lot of emotions, especially if you have someone in your life, like I said, that goes through these things or is going through these things, or it's a fear of yours, but it's so well done. It's so well done, and I definitely recommend it. My next 5-star was The Clackety by Laura Sempf. This is a middle grade, and did I love this because it was exactly what I needed at the time? Probably. I read it after reading We Spread and The Dead Romantics, because I just need something fun, lighthearted, kind of spooky, and this is exactly what I got with this book. But I also just love this book as well. I love the main character so much. I just feel like so much of myself in her. In this book, we are following our main character, Evie, and her aunt is a paranormal expert, and they live in one of the most haunted towns. And her aunt goes to explore this building and is like, Evie, you cannot come with me. But what does Evie do? Follows her and finds out that her aunt got kind of like trapped into another plane, and Evie has to go and save her, and it brings you through in this plane like all of these things that kind of remind you, like very Tim Burton-esque things. We have a house that's very much like Hansel and Gretel, and if you've ever seen Tim Burton's Hansel and Gretel, and it's the creepiest thing you've ever seen. If you have not seen it, please look it up. It is the most disturbing. You know that man can do disturbing. His take on Hansel and Gretel, I cannot. It's It's too much. It gives me nightmares still. But it brings you through these different houses, and I just love the story. It was spooky, it was creepy. The audiobook had creepy voices for the different characters, and she has to go and collect all of these keys from these different houses, and she herself has this like horrible backstory about her parents, and I loved it. It didn't feel too middle grade, but it was exactly like the cozy, spooky story with also a lot of heart and a lot of lessons on like just being yourself and embracing who you are, and also love of family and that kind of thing. And I just loved it. I loved it. I loved it. Also, this whole like cover is very Tim Burton-esque, so of course I was going to love it. I'm not surprised, and it was 5 stars. The next two I'm going to talk about together because they are a series and I read them almost back to back. It is A Psalm for the Wild Built and A Prayer for the Crowned Shy. This is a monk and a robot kind of cozy fantasy, but it takes a turn that you're like not really expecting, because you think that like the monk would be the zen one, and the monk is actually the one with like the chaotic thoughts and like trying to figure life out and like how they feel and how like who they are and how life works and that kind of thing. And then we have the robot who is like the zen one of the two, and this was just packed full of life lessons. If you are someone who is feeling lost in their life or has big decisions to make, or you are just kind of at like a crossroads or trying to pick a path, or any of those feelings, these books are for you right now. They're little novellas. They read so fast. Highly recommend the audiobooks, but I read them physically as well. I have fallen in love with these two characters, and there's also just so much representation in here. We have a non-binary character, we have a lot of talk about gender and sexual preferences and stuff like that, and it's just so incredibly well done in my opinion. And like I said, just chock full of life lessons, and I loved them both. Like I said, I read them very quickly, like back to back, and I just like need more immediately. Okay, we have 2 left. The next one I read the next in the Wayward Children series. This is Beneath the Sugar Sky. This is number 3, and 5 out of 5 stars. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. It's so good. This one, we are back at the school, and what I've learned about this series is that the odd number books take place at the school, and the even number books are about a student's backstory, like individual characters, which I didn't know, and now I know, and I just think that's really cool. And like Shauna Maguire's on it. But in this book, we are following the students as they are helping Rini, who has just like literally dropped out of the sky, and she starts disappearing, almost like a Back to the Future scenario, and she has to go and try to help solve something before she fully disappears. And we get glimpse into some of the other characters and where they're at. I'm not going to give anything away or say specifics, but I really enjoyed that. It's kind of like a little update on how they're doing, and I really enjoyed it. And Rini is like hilarious. I listened to the audiobook as well as read this physically, and her voice on the audiobook, I know some people it would be like nails on a chalkboard, but she is just like the most peppy, but also just like hilarious and just outspoken, and like does not think before she speaks at all, and doesn't understand why certain things are, because she's only used to her world, and which is very much like bubblegum and everything's great. And so she's very confused on like how other people operate, like even to the point of like she was naked when she arrived and they're wearing clothes, and she's like, why are you all disturbed at staring at me? It's just I'm just naked, it's no big deal. Like, it just was so funny. It was so funny. This book was hilarious and I enjoyed it, and like I cannot wait to continue in the series. I freaking love it. And then my last book of the month of March, we're here, we've made it, was The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz, and I am shooketh that this was her debut novel. How dare she? How dare she? What? You mean to tell me that this is your first book? I do not believe it. I do not believe it. I think she's written under some other name or something, because I don't know how she's gonna top it. It was so good. We're following Alex, who gets accepted into this writing retreat and goes and stays at this house with her ex-best friend, Ren being one of the other people who also got into this writing retreat, and it's put on by this famous author. And when they get there, they realize what they're going to be doing during this writing retreat and what it all entails. And there's a bit of a competition to it, but oh my god, we are unpacking what has happened with these two friends, which is the most relatable thing if you've ever gone through a friendship breakup, but also what is happening on this writing retreat, and it just gets wild and chaotic. Unhinged is the best word I can describe this book as. It is completely unhinged. It is over the top. It is insane, but it's done so well, and I had a great time. I have no complaints about this. The writing was good. Rosa, the author who puts this thing on, we stan. We are Rosa stans here, okay? Here for it. It's crazy. It is crazy. It's over the top. This is what I love in an over-the-top thriller. It just keeps going and going and going and getting worse and worse, but better and better, and I have nothing but good things to say. So that is my review on that. Read it. I don't think you'll regret it. And if you do, I'm so sorry. You really need to have more fun. I'm just kidding. But really, this book is so fun. And that is it. Those are all the books that I read in the month of March. We made it. We're here. I cannot wait to put these all away. That is my favorite part. But if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Do not forget to subscribe if you are not already. Turn on the bell so you never miss a video. And I will see you in my next one. Bye!
With you and I, the future is bright.